16th. This is a special meeting of the Guam Public Facilities Commission. All commissioners are present with the exception of Vice Chairman Peter Montanola. First order of business, Port Authority of Guam, PAG docket 2204. Is this coming through okay? Petition for approval of the award to AIC International Incorporated for the construction of the Agate Marina Dock B. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. So far, I believe this one is
Yeah,
yours.
this one is fine. Mr. Chair, this matter concerns PAG's request for PUC approval of its contract related to its Agate Marina Dock B project. And as the Commission may recall, the Agate Small Boat Marina, also known as the Agate Marina, is comprised of 4 docks, docks A through D, where commercial, recreational boats and liveaboard sailboats are secured. And while docks C and D, along with the floating dock, underwent recent repairs, no such repairs were made to dock B due to a lack of funding. However, according to PAG, Guam's Department of Agriculture has assisted PAG in securing federal funding for the project, and accordingly, PAG issued an IFB soliciting design and construction work for the Agate Marina Dock B project, whereby 2 firms submitted bids. PAG's personnel reviewed the bids and they determined AIC International to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. In fact, the second bid, the next bid, came in $1 million more than AIC's bid. And so PAG issued a notice to proceed. And we looked at the scope of work for this particular project, and this contract requires AIC to obtain the services of an engineering consultant to develop plans, provide load computations and specifications with respect to the design that's necessary for the fabrication and installation of a new Dock B facility. And this will include new main gangways, finger slips, gussets, stainless steel connectors, marine grade aluminum frames, flotation units, new steel pile rollers, mooring cleats, utilities, among other designs. Will also include electrical designs for feeder circuits, shipboard cables, circuit breakers, and watertight fittings and connectors. AIC will assemble this new fabricated main walkway dock and finger slips on dry land, and then when it's finished, it will lower the fabricated dock system into the water. According to the documents, the total cost for the project is $1,494,750, which is comprised of about $145,000 for design work, $66,000 for permit fees, and about $1.2 million for construction costs. PAG has informed us that the project will be funded with a federal grant in the amount of $500,000, which was awarded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, while the remainder of the cost of the project will be internally funded by PAG, which is about $995,000. We looked at AIC's bid, and based on the bid, AIC we found is certainly experienced with construction, design, build projects. For instance, it was involved with designing and constructing a tactical missile maintenance facility located on Anderson Air Force Base, restoration of Apra Harbor's wastewater treatment plant, repair of a heavy weather mooring at Alpha Wharf on Naval Base Guam, and significantly too, it was involved with the improvement projects for Agate Marina Docks C and D, which involved the same type of work, dismantling the existing docks and assembling a new marine-grade aluminum and stainless steel composite decking. And so based on this record, I recommended approval of the contract since the increased use of the Agate Marina does not only benefit the port through its user fees, but also benefits Guam's economy by providing more berths that supports Guam's boating activities. And so I recommended approval of the proposed contract with EIC at a cost of $1,494,750, $500,000 of which would be funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, with the remaining $994,750 to be funded internally by PH.
Thanks, Joe. Any comments from the board? Rory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, I'm with Deputy General Manager Louis Baza and our CIP Coordinator Clarence Lugutan and our procurement superstar Steve Munya. But having said that, I just want to add to the ALJ report. We thank you for this. This will create 48 new slips for 25-footer type small boat operators. So the market for this would be those that engage in sustenance fishing. This area, as the report pointed out, was damaged in 2013, and so it's completely open, and it has been open since then. And so this will allow us to move forward. $500,000 is being funded by the Sports Fishing Fund, and the balance is just being funded by our port unrestricted funds. And so we've also received $15 million allocation from the governor for the American Rescue Plan money, with the instruction, with the directive from the governor that the port's not to even thinking about raising tariffs for fiscal years 23 and 24. So as was pointed out in the other ALJ report, this will not trigger any need for increase in tariffs, but we are deeply committed to paying attention to our marinas, and this project reflects that commitment. Thank you.
Thanks, Rory. Any questions? Doris, go ahead.
Rory, excuse me. You said you're going to have 25 additional slips.
48 additional 25-foot slips. 48 25-footer slips and things.
Oh, okay. But you will charge for those at the existing rate?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Rory, so you issued a notice to proceed on June 7th.
Notice of award, not proceed.
Yeah.
Notice of award.
Notice of award, the NTP will happen after the PUC takes action.
Is that a typo then?
Yeah, that's a typo.
Oh.
I can amend that.
Yeah, probably.
Then you record it.
Okay.
You were testing Mike, weren't you?
Oh.
Thank you.
Pedro,
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Mike seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Next item. PAG docket 2205, petition for approval of the award to Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Company for the rebid of construction rehabilitation of Hotel Wharf and Highway 11 roadway reconstruction. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Mr. Harecki?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. First, it appears the Port Board did today approve the Hotel Wharf construction project, so it's now appropriate for this matter to be before the Commissioners. The matter is the Port's petition for review and approval of the procurement contract award to Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Company, which I'll refer to as SMCC, for the rehabilitation of Hotel Wharf and Highway 11 roadway reconstruction. This bid went through quite a process. Actually, there were two bids. In the first bid last year, by the deadline, there were no bidders that bid on the project. And the port then determined that it would rebid the project, and that's the present IFB PHE CIP 22-002. At the bid opening in January 28th of this year, only one company submitted a bid, and that was Sumitomo Mitsui. PHE determined that SMCC was the only responsible and responsive bidder with the lowest price, and its bid amount was $59,683,065. Upon further review, the general manager decided that the port would seek to negotiate the price, the scope of work, and the specifications pursuant to certain provisions of the Guam administrative regulations. And there was a negotiation that lasted a number of months on this. And on June 9th, the port and SMCC agreed to SMCC's revised price proposal for marine structure works. I attached a copy of that to my report, and the price change proposal was signed by both of the parties. What they agreed to there was to break the project up into 3 phases. And phases 1 and 2 essentially include the hotel wharf plans. Phase 1 includes the procurement of all steel piling work materials for the wharf, sheet plans, king piles, tie rods, dead man piles, compression and tension piles, and other associated miscellaneous steel connections. I think part of the idea is to buy the steel in phase 1 to hopefully get a lesser price. And also installation of the piles for the south wall. Phase 2 includes the installation of the west and east wall piles and other marine structures such as bulkhead and concrete works. Phase 2 includes the installation of the west and east wall piles and other marine structures such as the bulkhead concrete works, east, west, and south walls, onshore bollards, bulkhead mooring, cleat and bollard, and cell fenders. Now the negotiated price now for phases 1 and 2. Phase 1 is $39.485 million, and phase 2 is $6.846 million, for a total of $46,331,895. Phases 1 and 2 are mandatory on this bid and must be completed on or before the federal Tiger grant period of performance, which is May 31, 2024. Phase 2 is also mandatory and must be awarded within 1 year from the notice to proceed of phase 1. Now, phase 3 included the highway reconstruction, Highway 11 roadway construction, and other off-site works, but that is now optional. That will depend upon future approval and future allocation of available funding. The entire project is supposed to take a little over 2 years, 735 calendar days from the issuance of the notice to proceed. I've included quite a bit of material on what the project involves. It's the repair and upgrade of Hotel Wharf with a new bulkhead, with a modern mooring and fendering system, utilities, and upland pavement. The history is a little interesting, and I found some matters on that. Hotel Wharf was built between 1948 and 1953 and was used by the Navy as a munitions wharf during the Vietnam conflict. And it was formally transferred to the government of Guam in 1989. It was used as a wharf, as a passenger facility, and a boat charter operator's use, and for some transport, import of cars and light trucks. But it hasn't been used as a commercial wharf since 2001. The Hotel Wharf technical specifications also set forth a good explanation. The wharf replacement involves construction of a new sheet pile bulkhead retaining wall and sheet pile cap. There's also utilities involved for power, water, water line replacement, stormwater piping, etc. I don't think I'll cover that project in more detail. One thing that turned out well, I'll cover that later on, the determination of need as to what the uses will be for that facility. As I mentioned, the board of directors has now approved the project. Under the contract review protocol, this project has to be reviewed because it involves professional services of more than $1 million and also the use of bond funds. The PAG has clearly established that there is a need for the Hotel Wharf construction rehabilitation project. On April 19th, the port issued a determination of need for the project. Of course, the port operates the only commercial port for Guam and the primary seaport in Micronesia, and is also a transshipment hub. It handles over 2 million tons of cargo per year. The main point is that continuity of commerce and the sustainment of uninterrupted marine transportation into Guam and the Micronesian region is contingent upon the dependability and resiliency of port assets and infrastructure. The need documentation also addresses potential uses of Hotel Wharf, and this was based in part on a NAVFAC of Mariana's forecast. The port currently has 3 berths to accommodate container ships, general and unitized cargo vessels, and passenger ships. The NAVFAC believes that in 2023, that will be the peak in military buildup construction. And there will be an increase in container and break bulk cargo volume in the main container yard. It was determined then that Hotel Wharf is the perfect site for an alternate loading and offloading berth that could alleviate the congestion of other BF docks, in particular 3 to 6. And other cargoes could be handled there at the Hotel Wharf, including, but not limited to, aggregate, special imported construction materials, roll-on, roll-off, research vessels, passenger vessels, and military support. I did want to point out that this project has been approved by the legislature on many occasions, and I think that's always important for the PUC. PUC, of course, carries out the laws of Guam, and here the legislature in 3 different public laws did approve this project. In Public Law 32-155, it called the rehabilitation project to be a sustainability project and, quote, critical to preserving marine industrial capabilities in the CIP schedule. The other 2 laws I cited, 2470 and 3470 and 3544. These were the bills that approved bond funding for these projects. So on the Hotel Wharf project, the later law, 3544, reprogrammed bond funds and approved the amount of $13,774,255 for the rehabilitation of H. Wharf. As I review this procurement, I feel that the parties exercise best efforts to negotiate the project scope and to reach a reasonable amount for the award that the port would be able to fund. No doubt, this is a very expensive and complicated project too. The port has already set aside funds that will be able to fund this project. First, they have $10,000 from the Tiger grant. That's the Federal Maritime
Give me
Administration.
10 million.
I'm sorry, 10 million, what did I say? 10 million. And then bond funding of $10,277,000. Now, I mentioned before, the bond funding was over 13 million, but 3 million of that was for the roadway construction. So this is the portion allocated to the hotel Wharf. With those sources, it left a shortfall of about 26 million, but there are funding sources available. First of all, there is 15 million that the government of Guam and the governor gave to the port from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And that is in the port reserve account, so that the general reserve account, that money is available. In addition, the port intends to allocate 3 million in their CIP budgets for FY23 and 24. The port board has already approved the use of local revenue funds for this purpose. And then finally, a bond capital improvement reserve of 5 million. So with that, the port has sufficient funds to fund the 46 million for the project. Although the price is expensive, sometimes we've looked at, are there any alternate remedies here? Rebid again, in my mind, would not be worthwhile or fruitful. The first bid here didn't produce any bids. In the second bid, only one bidder, Smcc, participated. I do feel that the port has done the best job it can to mitigate the price. Smcc is eminently qualified to perform this contract. It is a leading Japanese construction company with operations over the globe. Its 2021 assets approach $3 billion. It has available bonding capacity on Guam of $100 million. And it has done many major works involving piling and deep water area works. On significant Guam projects, I noted that it did the Guam Waterworks Authority construction of Agate Santa Rita wastewater treatment plant replacement, phase 2. And it's also done a number of projects for the airport and the Guam Power Authority. The agreement, and I did receive a draft agreement between the port and Sumitomo. It does provide bid guarantees of 15% of the total bid amount. Smcc also has to provide a payment and performance bond equal to 100% of the accepted bid. It has other provisions that protect the port and its customers. One that provides that the port could terminate or modify the agreement based upon a lack of funding, although that doesn't seem likely now, but that protection is there. The port can also terminate the agreement for default or cause. There is an indemnification clause which protects the port. There are also liquidated damage provisions which require the contractor to pay $4,000 per day if they run over the deadline. So for the reasons I've indicated, I recommend that the PUC approve the contract award to Sumitomo in the amount of $46,331,895. And of course, the port, before it gives the award, will have to certify that there are funds available for the project. The port has established that these funds are available. As the general manager pointed out, I want to indicate that this project will not have a rate impact. The general manager represented to me, as he did to you tonight, that the port will not be seeking tariff increases in FY23, 24, and the port made the same promise in accepting the $15 million in the American Recovery Act funds. This project will assist PAG in further modernizing the port infrastructure and facilities, and the order would accomplish the matters that I've said.
Thank you, Fred. Roy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney Recchi, for that proposed order. Everything that was just read is really what's happened on the surface, below the surface, as the case is at the port. There was a lot of moving pieces. There was a lot of things that we needed to do, and we couldn't lose focus of why Hotel Wharf is so important for the Port Authority of Guam, for the community and for the region. Hotel Wharf is the linchpin of the port modernization project. It's going to serve as an alternate wharf. When this thing is fully constructed, it'll be it will be there to discharge vessels, any vessel that can be discharged without the use of a SES gantry crane. So your roll-on, roll-offs, even ships with ship's gear can offload containers, break bulk, all of those things could be done with Hotel Wharf. What also could be done with Hotel Wharf is what we've been pitching to the Department of Defense. We're going through a master plan update, a Port Authority rewrite, so that we could position ourselves so that the Department of Defense is going to be our biggest customer to the Port Authority of Guam, particularly with the Indo-Pacific strategy and the Pacific deterrence and what's happening with China and Russia and Ukraine. The military has taken notice of what kind of opportunities there could be achieved at the Port Authority of Guam to support their military readiness. And so this project was let out at $24 million. It came back at $59 million. The first bid that we went, but this was 2014 numbers. So when we went out for bid, there was 22 prospective bidders that were interested, and then we had 0 companies submitting a bid. We surveyed through our procurement process, and we had a post-grade survey for all the 22 companies, and one of their main concerns was, well, it's very clear that there's only 24 million. They didn't even want to bother. They didn't want to bother submitting a bid if we didn't have the funding. The 2018 revenue bond law, it set out the projects to which will be funded by the revenue bond, and it capped the amounts for those bonds. So when we went to the legislature the first round to tell them, through the support of the board and the governor, don't demolish the administration building, take the 17.5 million, bring it down to 10.5 million, build an annex to connect the annex to the administration building so it becomes ADA accessible. And I presented this to the PUC over and over. So those projects were done. 7.5 million was available for the financial management upgrade, the field connectivity line, also the terminal operating software and repairs to F1. We got the field connectivity line, 3.1 million funded through Economic Development Authority. We spent 2.5 million, 2.5 million from those monies to upgrade to the enterprise one. We recently were awarded a bid of 17.19 million for a $23 million total project to rehabilitate F1 to F6, so there's a $5 million matching grant there. And so we also asked the board to pass a resolution giving me authorization as general manager to tap any grants, any unrestricted funds to cover over the shortfalls with the Hotel Wharf and other CIP funded, bond funded projects. So we communicated that to all the prospective bidders that we do have the authority to find the money and to make sure that whatever shortfalls would be covered. So the second time we bid, we had lone bidder, Sumitomo Construction, came in at 59 million. That was far beyond our reach. And so we got together with our CIP coordinator, Mr. Lagutan. He's managed $1 billion worth of CIPs through NAFAC, and so we're able to have him as our CIP coordinator. He's now a port employee. He worked with legal and Stephen with procurement. They negotiated this 59 million down to 46 million, and I asked them to break it up in 2 phases. Phase 1 is, what do we need to do just to rehabilitate the wharf? Because if we just end up with a rehabilitated wharf, concrete slab, and the road, which will be funded by Federal Highway, the governor was able to work with Director Ariola and Federal Highway. they've already committed in writing to spend upwards of $3 million to do the main road. And so we have the $36 million shortfall just for the wharfs. And so the $15 million ARP money, 14 million of that is being pledged to cover over the shortfall for phase one. Phase two, about 8 million. We've identified on 2023 budget, 2024 budget, $3 million and $5 million from the facility fund. But if we do things like we're also petitioning Department of Transportation and MARAD to grant a waiver from Buy American, so we won't have to purchase steel through those requirements. And we've been trying to do that, and so if we can get a Buy American waiver, then we'd probably save upwards of 6 to 8 million just on phase one, and then we could put that over to phase two. We've had very successful discussions. I know they're just discussions with the Department of Defense, with MARAD. The Navy is rehabilitating their pier, and they're getting their steel beams from Japan because they're not subject to Buy American, but we are. We're running their steel beams through the Port Authority of Guam for their project. So those are the arguments that we're making. But if we just end up with phase one and we don't do phase two, that's still a success story. But certainly there's provisions to do phase two, and phase three will be funded by Federal Highway. And so that's the genesis of how we got to this point, and I ask for unanimous consent because this is a project that we cannot afford not to do. There's a big cost of not doing it. We have to have substantial completion by August of 2024 in order to be reimbursed from that $10 million Tiger grant.
Thank you, Roy. Any questions from the commission? Joe?
Yeah, the project has a timeline of 2 years, 24 months, but the Tiger grant is, we have to complete it by May 31st, 2024, or that's like 23 months. There's a concern there, or no?
There's always been a concern, just like with the Tiger grant. It was awarded in 2016, and there was a 3-year period of performance to get that whole area ready. They had to do an economic assessment. In 2019, we had major progress. We submitted the Tiger grant compliance in May, and it was reviewed summertime, and then it was awarded on the last month of the last year that 3-year would be up. So we're kind of used to this kind of situation, but it doesn't deter us. It's a concern, but we're in discussions with MARAD. The delay is the long lead items, the steel, beams, and the bollards. If we get a Buy American waiver, then instead of 18 months to get the steel to come here, we can get that in 6 months. So in my discussions with MARAD, either through Zoom or even face-to-face in Washington, D.C., I've told them that the cost to comply with their Buy American and with this $10 million grant, it's costing us more money. And so at some point, we might just say, take your $10 million because, and then the $24 million, the $10 million plus the revenue bond match was for the wharf, the concrete pad, and the road. So we had to work with MARAD to have the road de-scoped, have everything that was promised in the original grant with the concrete pad, have that de-scoped. And so those are the kind of things that we have to do. If we don't have but if we bifurcate it and just focus on the wharf, then we'll be able to complete that within the period of substantial completion. That included the concrete pad work and also the road.
Rory, does the road go all the way across Glass Breakwater or just to the wharf?
Just to the wharf, but we're trying to find a way to go all the way to past Family Beach. There's another project involving a recycling company that wants to have that road to be like a pilot project for their product.
Thank you. Doris?
Just a minor question. Hotel Wharf is where again? How far past your administrative building?
Maybe another minute or so. Then you see the golf pier, and then you see the silo Cementon, past Cementon.
Past
So-
that, silo?
Yeah, so it's
Okay,
gonna
further,
be to the
okay.
left, yeah.
Before the barge. You see that
Yeah.
barge in there? So that clearly-
Oh, that, okay. Oh, that far down. Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you. But, well, going back to, Joe's question, you said you might even consider not taking the money? How far are you in your negotiations with the Buy America? Because, you know, right now, time is of the essence. You've got to make a decision, you know, like, you know, you want to give the notice to proceed, like, in the next day or so. So, where are you and, on that?
So Sumitomo is looking at what it would cost without Buy American, and we should be getting that in a couple days.
Okay.
But I just say facetiously that we're gonna not take the 10 million. Obviously,
Oh.
that's the last resort, but if we do a cost benefit analysis and the time constraints that we have and the requirements that we are put under, those are all of the things that we're weighing. But if we don't, even without the $10 million, because that's a reimbursement, those things will be covered over by port funds.
Oh, so Merritt's not gonna give you the money, concurrently, it's gonna,
No.
you have to pay out. So do you have the capital to do that, the cash to do that?
That's the arrangement.
Uh-huh.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Yeah, I just have a question about how the phase two award, how does it actually work? Because it says that phase two is to be awarded within 1 year from the notice to proceed phase one. So, but aren't we, if we're approving now, aren't we approving both phase one and two?
Yeah, and phase two will be subject to the availability of funds. Because we also have a bill before the legislature that's from the 10.5 million for the administration building. Our consultants tell us that we probably need around 2 million to extend the service life, the rebar, the spalling, and the issues there. So we have about $8 million from the budget to construct a new annex building. If the legislature removes all those caps, then I'll certainly ask our board to not build an annex building and take that money and fund phase two. So we have a lot of plan Bs. Because that money better be spent on the wharfs and our yard equipment and our gantry cranes before it's spent on an administrative building.
So you're not committed to phase two. At this point, you'd have to still issue a separate award for phase two before you're fully committed.
No, we're committed to phase one and phase two for the contract, but if there's no funds for phase two for some reason, then we don't have to do phase two, and Sumitomo's aware. But phase two is the size for the electrical conduits but what we're after is to fully rehabilitate that wharf and take care of the actual wharf and rehabilitate that.
The wharf would be functionable without phase two. Rowena?
Rory, I'm looking at the breakdown here, I think this is Exhibit 3, January 28, 2022. And I'm wondering, did we just negotiate out the scope of work for phase one, phase two, or are we really seeing some savings here as far as the project from 59 to 46?
No,
Because it seems like we're just pushing out the phases, so.
Yeah, Commissioner, we are receiving substantial savings. Otherwise, how else would we go down from 59 million to 46 right?
I'm looking at phase one, phase two, and phase three, and it shows 59,683, million for the original bid price, but then when we break it down in phase one, two, and three, it's what I added, it's like 60 million for all phases, all three phases.
Okay, no, you're correct, I stand corrected. We asked them to put them in phases.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so prioritize most important, and
Yeah.
then as the money becomes available, then, they'll get covered, have to work. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding how we laid out the plan here.
But Sumitomo knows that if we can't do phase two, then we have a year to trigger that.
Thank you.
I meant to say that the savings will come if we don't have to comply with Buy American.
Anything else? So we have-
You second, Pedro? Okay.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion
Carries unanimously. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Port. Godspeed.
Thanks.
Next item is GPA docket 2215, petition for levelized energy adjustment clause for the period from July to December 2022. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Looking back at the time of the filing of this petition, which was June 1st, GPA had asked for a 3-step increase in the LEAC. And at that time, it was proposing 24 cents effective July 1st, and that would be in effect until August 31st. A second step increase of 27 plus cents from September 1st to October 31st, and a third step of 29.6275 cents effective November 1st through January 31. And that was the state of the proposal. The proposal at the time that the CCU approved the resolution. However, what happens in every LEAC case, the GPA petition was based upon fuel price figures from Morgan Stanley from May 6 to May 10. And although the CCU didn't approve it until the end of May, and the petition was filed June 1st, it was based upon early May Morgan Stanley fuel price factors. However, early in June, as I always do in every LEAC proceeding, I write GPA and the controller, Mr. Kim, and I indicate that pursuant to our established procedure at the PUC, we need the updated fuel prices 10 days before the PUC meeting and the average of those 5 days, 10 days before the meeting. So that's exactly what GPA, as it always does here, it updates the fuel prices. And not surprisingly, the fuel prices increased an awful lot during that period. So on about June 7th, GPA sent me what I've marked as Exhibit 4, I believe, to the ALJ report. And that is the current updated proposal. This was prepared by GPA. It says at the top, GPA proposed LEAC rate. This is GPA's updated proposal as to what the LEAC rate should be to accomplish the purposes. And it's there you can see that they've altered the amounts of the 3-step increase. It turned out that we were hoping before that the under-recovery would only be 20 to 25 million. In fact, it now turns out that the under-recovery at the end of this month is going to be 35 million because of the steep increases. So based on the updated Morgan Stanley fuel prices from May 27th through June 3rd, GPA has a new schedule for the 3-step increases. And that is, first of all, 0.251638 cents effective July 1st, then September 1st, 0.296043 cents, and then up to over 34 cents effective November 1st. So that is how we come up with a proposal that is now before you commissioners. And that's the way the commission has always done it, as long as I've been involved in LEAC, at least going back 8 years. Now, I think we added that procedure in to ensure that the LEAC factors are based upon the most updated current prices. That's why we added the requirement that there be an updated Morgan Stanley price consideration. Before I go more into the three-step increase proposals, there was another proposal that the CCU made to withdraw an additional up to $10 million of self-insurance funds to purchase fuel. And I think you know the position I took. This issue came up before. The commission did in January of 2021 approve $10 million to be applied to the fuel clause. But it was a much different situation at that time. At that time, there was over 19 million in the self-insurance fund. So even when 10 million was withdrawn, there was still more than 9 million left. The self-insurance fund is a special fund. It's a restricted fund. Its purpose is typhoon recovery, basically, recovery from natural disasters. That's why the funds were put there. And the 20 million, which was the original amount, it wasn't drawn out of thin air. It was determined by the PUC consultants, GPA working together, and that was the amount that was determined to be necessary to take care of a major typhoon repair situation. Now, here the situation is much different. Right now, there's only 11.5 million in the self-insurance fund. If another 10 million is withdrawn, that leaves us with 1.5 million. And that is certainly not sufficient to cover the purpose and intent of the self-insurance fund. So in my mind, that would undermine the self-insurance fund. It would make Guam vulnerable to not having the sufficient funds for repair damage in the event of a typhoon. And there were discussions with Mr. Kim about other proposals, maybe GPA taking a loan from the self-insurance fund, but I just don't feel that it's appropriate to use that fund to pay for fuel. It was never intended to do that. And I also felt it was illegal, as I indicated in my prior writing on this subject. But for that reason, my recommendation is that you reject that proposal, that it would gut the self-insurance fund, and it's not protecting the long-range interests of the ratepayers of Guam. So why is the LEAC increasing? Why does it have to be increased to this extent? I think it's pretty obvious. Since January of this year, fuel prices have gone up 70%. And even in the period between the first Morgan Stanley readings in the beginning of May and the most recent one at the end of May and beginning of June, fuel prices have gone up quite considerably. And I want to just read you the difference between the fuel prices. So with regard to the earlier Morgan Stanley figures from May 4th through May 10th, GPA, in this first estimate that they filed with their petition, they estimated that the average price per barrel of RFO was $141.57. And the average price per barrel for diesel was $126.54. However, with the updated Morgan Stanley figures now, and this is on Exhibit 4, this is what's current. So the price of fuel has increased considerably. Average price per barrel RFO now $148.28, and the average price for diesel $139.67. So that's why the increases are necessary here, because the price of fuel has, even in this 1 month period, it has increased again, rather substantially. I've cited other figures for you showing the increase in the Morgan Stanley fuel prices. So the difference really is when GPA filed its petition, the per barrel prices of both RFO and diesel were quite a bit lower. As a result of the updated figures, it's more expensive now. And GPA has determined that the prices they've recommended for the 3-step increase are what they feel was necessary. I also wanted to mention, I've mentioned a perfect storm before. It's not only the fact that the fuel prices are going up now, it's that GPA is paying more for more expensive fuel, because as a result of the consent decree, it now has to buy low sulfur fuel, will shortly have to be buying ultra low sulfur diesel. So in other words, not only are fuel prices increasing, but the fuel, the specific fuel that GPA must purchase is more expensive. And on top of that, in order to accommodate these cheaper fuels, various plants, PD 8 and 9, are going through a process of renovation so that they can be used for these type of diesel fuels. And the Cabras plants too will have to switch to the low sulfur residual fuel oil. So again, a perfect storm of 3 different kinds of events. Now what happens if the PUC doesn't do anything tonight? Well, you remember before, as I mentioned, the goal of the PUC was to keep the under recovery in the 20 to 25 million range. What is the under recovery? That's what ratepayers owe to GPA right now. Of course, your gas station doesn't say, oh, gas up today, you can pay me, 5 months from now. But GPA has attempted to be considerate with ratepayers and thus allows a pretty substantial under recovery. The under recovery before was never more than 32 million. But as of June, the end of June, this month, it'll be 35 million. And if you didn't increase the LEAC at all, by next January 2023, at the end of that month, the under recovery will be up to 87 million. Now, even if you approve these step 1 and step 2 increases, as I'm recommending, up to 25 and 29 cents, in fact, the under recovery in the next 4 months is still going to increase. It's going to go from 35 to 37 million. So these increases, all they are, they're a placeholder to prevent a larger and larger under recovery. They don't do anything to collect the 35 million. They don't even start to do that. This is what is minimally necessary to prevent a huge hole for the ratepayers in a growing under recovery. My recommendation is that you adopt steps 1 and 2, the 25 and 29 cents. That's going to be over a 26% increase over the 4-month period. The reason I think you should hold off on the 34-cent increase for November 1st is I think by the October meeting, we'll have more information as to what's the effect of these increases, what is the direction of fuel prices. It's interesting, Morgan Stanley has kind of consistently, they indicate downward fuel prices over the rest of the year. But unfortunately, for the last few months, their predictions have been inaccurate. I look at them pretty closely, and fuel prices, contrary to what they were thinking, have not been going down for May and June. But nonetheless, rather than adopt 34 cents now, I believe the commission would want more information to do a little closer evaluation of that issue in October. And it's quite likely that another large increase will be necessary. There's still the $37 million under recovery that's going to have to be recovered, but it just would give the commission an opportunity to have a more accurate calculation of what the price would be. So my recommendation is that you approve the step one increase to 0.251638 per kilowatt hour for meters read on and after July 1st, and also approve the second step increase of 0.296043 kilowatts per kilowatt hours for meters read on and after September 1st. Then at the October meeting, the commission would further consider a possible step 3 increase. And finally, of course, I've recommended that the PUC reject the use of self-insurance funds to purchase fuel. The order that I prepared would implement all of those recommendations and also what we call the secondary fuel prices for the other types of power usage. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Fred. Melinda, you have any comments?
Thank you, Commissioners. I just wanted to stress that fuel prices are just off the charts right now, and it's affecting our operations, and hence our petition to increase the LEAC. But we understand and we're sensitive to the hardship that it provides our ratepayers, and we're still working with the Lieutenant Governor, the lawmakers to see if there's any kind of resources they can provide us to help alleviate our under recovery and what we're passing on to our ratepayers. Additionally, we've been in social media trying to encourage our customers to save energy. We're operating efficiently, trying to dispatch our units as best as possible, the more efficient units first. Unfortunately, we're coming down, like ALJ Harecki said, for maintenance and overhauls and conversion, and we will be burning the diesel fuels more now. We're trying to commit to achieve the consent decree requirements, and so it truly is a perfect storm. But we will not give up trying to find other avenues to recover this. But right now, the situation is dire, and we need the fuel to operate. So we just ask for your consideration.
Thank you, Melinda. I think one of the interesting exhibits in this ALJ report is Exhibit 3. Shows the graphs of the prices of low sulfur fuel, high sulfur fuel, and the ultra low sulfur diesel fuel that we have. We're needing to burn the cleaner fuels now, of course, because of the EPA consent decree. And just looking at here at the start on the left-hand side, ultra low sulfur diesel was probably around $55 a barrel 18 months ago. And now it's climbed up to almost the $170 a barrel level. That's almost a 300% increase in 18 months. That's what we're facing right now. It's a perfect storm of very high costs, unfortunately. Do any of the other commissioners have any comments? Who would like to start? Doris?
Have you noticed whether or not demand has actually dropped because of the rising costs? What's, because I'll give you an example myself. I've stopped using my dryer completely. So has there actually been, has demand continued to rise? Because
Comparing from June of last year, there hasn't been a decrease. And these are actually our hottest months and our highest consuming months. We just peaked peaked a few days ago at 251 megawatts, which usually is our high. So we have not seen that. Everyone's kind of home from school, and they're still turning on their air conditioners, and they're still using power. So we haven't seen a significant drop, say, back when the pandemic first started. So not really.
Can you, so for, I don't know what the average consumption of kilowatts is, but what would the bill go from, I have no issue with the 25 cents. My issue is with the 29 cents. Okay, so what would the bill go when we go to 25 cents versus what would it go to 27 cents versus 29 cents?
So I believe okay. So what we're saying is about a 13% increase, 13.72% increase at 25 cents. That the average residential customer who's consuming, is it still 1,000? Still 1,000 kWh.
So with 25-cent increase, I mean, we got going to 25 cents. So what would the total bill be with that 13% increase?
So it's an additional $42 a month.
So what is the total bill?
Let me see. So $300 to about $349.
So, wow, okay, that's for the 25 cents.
Correct.
Okay, what would it be then at the 27 cents versus the 29 cents?
The 27 cents. The initial request?
Yes, the initial request.
Doris, the second increase was a 12.7% increase, so if you went to 27 cents, it'd be about 6.6% or so.
So we're still seeing from the $350, the next increase will bring it up to $393.
Is that at 27 cents or 29?
That's at 29 cents. So I guess we're going to take half of that, about 370 probably.
So if we approve the order right now, next month the consumer will be paying from $300 to about $350.
Yes, ma'am.
And then 2 months from now, we'll be paying closer to $400.
Yes, ma'am.
As opposed to $370.
And just a note, we just looked at the prices today, and they're still not stabilizing. The price of diesel continues to climb, and the price of our 180 CST is pretty much stable at the high cost it is now.
Pedro?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Is there a second to that motion?
Could we divide the question? I have no issue with the first increase. I do have significant issues with the second increase. Could we divide the question saying the first rate increase effective July 1 is?
Doris, you can divide the question if we don't get a second or if the motion doesn't pass, but Mr. Guerrero just made a motion.
Oh,
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, the motion is to do the two-step.
Mr. Guerrero's motion is to do the 25 cents over 2 months and then the 29 cents over the next 2 months.
Second.
Rowena seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
two.
To pass the motion, Doris.
Oh, well, see, that's where I
Aye.
wanted to ask if I could divide the question, because I have no issue on the first increase. I do have significant issues on the second increase. That was my.
The motion's on the table. There's 5 aye votes.
Oh.
So you can vote aye or nay.
Well, I'm asking if, so is my motion to divide the question?
The motion's already carried.
There's a past motion.
Okay.
Doris, are you an aye or a nay?
Nay.
For the record, nay. Okay. The motion carries 5-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item is approval of hiring of a part-time assistant to the administrator. We are losing Cindy here relatively quickly, in about 2 weeks. Is that right, Cindy? And we're going to miss her dearly. She's been wonderful to have here with us, with Lou on the PUC, and a lot of wonderful things have happened during the time that she's been with us. And I just want to say thank you from all of us, Cindy, for all the good work that you've done. You've been an incredible employee.
Thank you also for continually giving me the opportunity to just work for PUC and for you guys. I wish I wasn't leaving yet, but blame it on my husband. But Lou and I were just talking about, because of the press time, I mentioned to her that I would like to introduce a former colleague of mine that we used to work together for, Anthony Camacho. And her and I had built a system that I am doing right now, the system that I have. So she used to work for Anthony for almost 2 years until in 2020, Anthony accepted an offer with UOG, so we had to close down the office. And she got picked up by another law office as a legal secretary. So her and I have been communicating. She is also using the same system that I'm using right now. So it would be very easy for her to just transition. But then again, it's up to you.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Any comments? Fred, do you have any comments?
I do. We're kind of going to be in an emergency situation without Cindy. The advantage of trying this person, who's the legal secretary, which I feel has been good training for working with the administrator and his assistant at the PUC. We'll have 2 weeks where Cindy can train Colleen, I think was her name. And if we did nothing right now, we're going to be in a pickle because there won't be anybody. And then if we went after some other search, now I looked at this from a legal viewpoint. I think there's no problem. Our law, by the way, doesn't require a procurement or anything. It says the commission shall retain on an as-needed basis those professional services required by the commission for performance of its duties. The commission may employ administrative staff personnel for the conduct of the commission business. I think because of the situation the commission's in, it would be prudent to have the benefit of Cindy training Colleen. And then, of course, the commission can always consider future, does it need to look again or go out again? I mean, those are always options, but if we don't do this, I just don't see any viable alternative. I want to come and thank Cindy for her great work on the website, for example. Before Cindy, Lou and I were always overburdened with a lot of different things, but usually we were the ones that did the website together. And it's hard, and that's not what I'm cut out to do. Right. But we did make it work, and we got it done. But Cindy has been really good. So I'm hoping the person she trains, because that frees up Lou and certainly me from having to enter the orders and the other documents that we have on the website. She's done a really good job with it, and she's been up to date. She keeps up with everything. So, from her recommendation for this woman, Colleen, at least I think is worthwhile to give it a try, and then the commission can always later take different steps that they want to consider something else.
Any other comments?
I've looked at the resume that you circulated, and I think it looks like she's very qualified, suitable for the position. And I also think it's good that we have Cindy who's worked with her before, and so everybody knows her background and her capabilities. And the fact that she's worked for ALJ Camacho too, right? And I wanted to ask if anyone's consulted with him, got his input as to sort of how he feels about her as a candidate.
I know.
Fred, just one the Civil Service Commission is not applicable to us. Because the reason I say this, because we couldn't do any of this discussion whatsoever through the Civil Service.
Remember-
Because we have to have a blind, yeah,
Our employees are not government
yeah.
employees.
Well, that's why I'm
So
just.
we're not, in my opinion, not subject to the civil services.
Because we couldn't have this kind of discussion at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But our statute gives the commission a lot.
I just wanted to get that on the record.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
What is the motion?
To accept Colleen.
I move to make an offer to Colleen for the position.
Before we, I noticed that Lou is not here. How does Lou feel about that?
I think she's in favor of it.
Okay,
She's in favor of it.
okay. That's fine. It's your
That's it.
Lou, the motion.
So Pedro's gonna second Mike's motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much. I want to mention the other thing that Cindy did for us, aside from these wonderful tabs on our binders, was she and Lou took the time to download all of our information in the digital format, which was a lot of work. And it's something we've been wanting to do for a long time, and Lou just couldn't have the time without help, and with Cindy's presence here in the commission, that afforded them the ability to get that job done too. So that was one heck of a project. We're gonna miss you a lot, Cindy.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?